Let's talk about Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions. The story so far with the Lions this season is how fast things can change in the NFL. You go back to last season, they had a 15-2 record, a tremendous coaching staff with Dan Campbell being one of the best head coaches in the NFL, and he still is. You have Ben Johnson, great offensive coordinator in Detroit, but we all knew eventually he's going to be a head coach very soon at that point in time. And Aaron Glenn, give him a lot of credit, was a very good defensive coordinator in Detroit. They had so many injuries, and yet they were still winning football games. They had the first seed in the NFC. You go to the playoffs against the Washington Commanders. You did lose that game. It came down to the mistakes with Jared Goff and those interceptions. And your defense, they just couldn't hold up. They just had too many injuries. But it was very important for Brad Holmes, the man that you see on your screen currently, the general manager with this organization, to go out there and fully retool this roster from this previous offseason. Ben Johnson, he leaves. He becomes the head coach with the Bears. Aaron Glenn, now the head coach with the New York Jets. When you bring in new coordinators, you always worry about the structure with your team. So John Morton, brand new offensive coordinator in Detroit. Kelvin Shepard, former linebackers coach. You're now the defensive coordinator. But it came down to Brad Holmes to go out there and to make decisions in the offseason. Go out there and bring in new free agents to help out your offensive line. Make a huge splash in the NFL draft. Do something at the trade deadline. But Brad Holmes, he made a lot of decisions that made me scratch my head. And this is not a video to say fire Brad, fire Dan Campbell. These are two very important people with Detroit, and they have done a tremendous job over the last few years. But going back to Brad here, you traded Tim Patrick to the Jacksonville Jaguars. He was a very good number 3 wide receiver, a very crucial piece with this offense over the last few years when he was fully healthy. Frank Ragnow, he retired. Kevin Zeitler, he left in free agency. He goes to the Tennessee Titans. So now the interior of your offensive line is not the same. Your wide receiving position behind St. Brown and Jameson Williams is not the same. And you have little to no pass rush outside of Aiden Hutchinson. This was very important to fix in the offseason. And Brad Holmes just sat on his hands. Now, he did bring in Isaac Tesla. And we'll talk about him more in depth here in the next couple of minutes. But the volume hasn't been there for Isaac this season. Not a bad wide receiver. Just hasn't done much this year in terms of catches and touchdowns on the field. And Detroit currently, they have a 7-5 record. If they lose 2 more games, you could put a fork in this team. You're third in your division, behind the Bears, who are in first place with Ben Johnson, and second place the Green Bay Packers. For the first time since 2020, Detroit has been swept by the Packers this season. So they hold a tiebreaker over you. And that tie against the Dallas Cowboys, that can help them advance to the postseason. When I look at the remaining schedule here for Detroit, they are in trouble. Your next game is against the Dallas Cowboys. You are the home team. You have to win this game. But St. Brown, he'll be out for this game. He's dealing with an ankle injury. And your defense has let up a lot of big plays within the last couple of weeks against the New York Giants with Jameis Winston, and last week against the Green Bay Packers with Jordan Love. And the Dallas Cowboys, they have one of the best offenses in the game. You have to play better with your defense, and in terms of going out there and just being better up front and putting pressure on the opposing quarterback. But the Cowboys, that's a tough matchup. Then you face the Los Angeles Rams on the road. They're currently the best team in the NFC. You face the Steelers at home. That's a winnable game. You face the Minnesota Vikings on the road. That should be a win for Detroit, but you just lost to the Vikings a couple weeks ago. And then you close out against the Bears on the road. So it's a good chance that Detroit may miss out on the postseason. And that has not been the case with Dan Campbell over the last few years. Going back to week 1, we saw a lot of cracks with the Detroit Lions, and it's week 1, you just brush it off. But the play calling was not the best with John Morton. They could not protect Jared Goff here. And Jared was 31 of 39, 225 passing yards, 1 pass, a touchdown, 1 interception, but he got sacked 4 times. And we all know this about Jared Goff. You keep him clean, he can be one of the best quarterbacks in the game. He's a surgical passer on every single level. The accuracy is tremendous when he's not dealing with pressure. But whenever you put pressure around Jared Goff, he's not the same guy. And you can say that for a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL. But when you look at quarterbacks like Joe Burrow, Patrick, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, over the last few years of their career, even Baker Mayfield, they can make plays outside the pocket. Jared Goff does not have the athleticism. A play action bootleg is different. That's part of the play. You're getting him outside the pocket. But a traditional 5-step drop, you put that pressure on him with an elite edge rusher like Micah Parsons, you're asking for trouble. And this game was not all on Jared Goff, but the offensive line was abysmal in the first matchup against Green Bay, and that's a division rival. And look at what other teams have done in the NFC. The Packers, they make the trade to bring in Micah Parsons, and I'm not saying that Detroit should have went out there and they should have made a trade to bring in Micah. But you have to do something. They make their team better with that move. Then you look at the Philadelphia Eagles. This one really got me. The Eagles give up a 3rd-round pick to bring in Jalen Phillips from the Miami Dolphins. Now, this is very important to bring up. If Brad comes out and he said that he values draft picks, I understand that. But if Jalen Phillips leads the Philadelphia Eagles this offseason, they get a compensatory pick back. And it will be a 3rd-round pick. Detroit could have easily made that move to bring in Jalen Phillips. He would have been a perfect player to have alongside Aiden Hutchinson. But you did nothing to address that at all at the trade deadline and this offseason. But the next week, you go against the Chicago Bears. Your former offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, he's the head coach with the Bears. You beat the brakes off this team. Division rival. This is what you needed. You won this game 52-21. You kept Jared Goff upright. He had 5 passing touchdowns. They'll get it done. A great game plan by John Morton. And the same with Dan Campbell and Kevin Shepard, which your defensive coordinator. The next week against the Baltimore Ravens, Jared Goff once again was phenomenal. 20-28, 202 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, 0 interceptions. Another good game that was called up by John Morton, your offensive coordinator. But Kevin Shepard, he had a key game plan and back-to-back weeks. The way that he was rotating safeties on the back end, putting up spies for Lamar Jackson, blitzing from different angles. At this point in time, I was saying that, hey, maybe one day Kevin Shepard could be a head coach. The way that he's making adjustments in game is just tremendous. And usually you don't see this for a first-year defensive coordinator. I know that he worked underneath Aaron Glenn as a linebackers coach, but that's different from calling plays. This was a great game all around, and the running backs got it done with Jahmyr Gibbs, and the same with David Montgomery. They had over 200 yards from rushing. This is what Detroit is about. Like Dan Campbell said, go out there, bite off kneecaps, be aggressive as possible. Win through the trenches, figure things out. You defeat the Cleveland Browns, another great win for Detroit. That's a tough defense. You put up 34 points on them. Jared Goff had another good game against the Cincinnati Bengals. Weak defense. You go out there, you take care of business. But you ran to Kansas City. Now, this was an awkward game. Jared Goff had a receiving touchdown on the opening drive. The referees came out. They said that the play doesn't count. He moved from under center, a legal formation. I don't agree with that. And technically, referees cannot even review that play at that point in time. But they did. It's Kansas City. A lot of weird things have happened when you face that team on the road. This was a tough loss for Detroit. But it was a team that just went to the Super Bowl the previous season. You're okay. You still have a positive record. You go against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Another great game plan by Kevin Shepard and his defense. Put a lot of pressure on Baker Mayfield. Rotate players over. Move around Aiden Hutchinson. You got it done. But then you go against the Minnesota Vikings. This was an awkward game. You lost this game 27-24. J.J. McCarthy was the starting quarterback. Now, J.J. can be a very good player long term. What we know right now is that J.J. McCarthy is not a good player for the Minnesota Vikings. And yet he went out there and he had good moments against this defense, and your offense could not keep up. It was just a weird game for Detroit. And it sucks to lose this game because you already lost to the Packers in week 1. A division rival. You defeated a division rival in week 2 against the Bears. That's great. It's important to win these games. But you lost this game against Minnesota. The next week against the Commanders, this point in time, before the game starts, we're getting a lot of reports that Dan Campbell will be calling plays in this game. Now, going back to the week before, against the Minnesota Vikings, the offense has some bad moments. When you have players like Jared Goff, Jameson Williams, St. Brown, Sam Laporte at that time before he went down with his back injury, David Montgomery, you have so many weapons, Isaac Tesla, rookie wide receiver. And yet you cannot go out there and be consistent against the Minnesota Vikings in this defense, and they are blitz heavy. And Brian Flores is a very good defensive coordinator. But we've seen Ben Johnson go out there and give this team fits with this offense. I know that the offensive line is different in the interior, but they still had chances to go out there and to score points. They're very conservative, and the flow of the game wasn't the same. So Dan Campbell comes out. He doesn't fire John Morton. He wants a different feel for the game. So the next week against the Washington Commanders, and the Commanders, banged up team, they're not good right now dealing with those injuries. You put up 44 points. At that point in time, we all knew Dan Campbell is going to be calling plays for the rest of the season. Whenever a head coach takes away the play call sheet and they put up 30 plus points, the offensive coordinator, he's done for. But they finally got their groove back. We saw big time plays to St. Brown, the same with Jameson Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs. They were still being shy in terms of mixing in the run with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, but they got the job done. Then the next week against the Philadelphia Eagles, Dan Campbell did not call a bad game. It came down to the problems that Brad Holmes did not fix. You could not get enough pass rush on Jalen Hurts, and the interior of your offensive line is just not good right now. You lost this game 16-9. And we could talk about Dan Campbell. He's always going for two. Not going for two, pardon me. He's always going for it on fourth down. Why does he always go for it on fourth down? That's who Dan Campbell is. If he converts it, he looks like a genius. If he doesn't, a lot of people complain about it. Now, I do agree with this standpoint. He's going for it on fourth a lot now. Way too much, in my opinion. It's okay to take that field goal, take your 3 points, and play defense. Go out there and live to see another down. But in this game against the Philadelphia Eagles, he could have easily taken 3, but he goes for it, and they don't get it. And this is the problem when you go for it and you don't get it. When you're in a defensive game like that, it is not a guarantee that your offense can drive back in that same spot and they can walk off with yet another potential field goal. And I know the kicker missed an extra point. It was a windy game, but you still take your points in a defensive slug out like how you were in against the Philadelphia Eagles. But those problems started to show up once again. Then you go against the New York Giants. This was a bad game for Kelvin Shepard. The Giants are running trick plays in this game. Jameis Winston, the quarterback, who's a backup quarterback, who has had very good moments in his career, they run a trick play with him. He gets a receiving touchdown. What the hell are the players doing? And Kelvin Shepard is not making those same adjustments that he was within the first month of the season. He's not moving Aiden Hutchinson around as much, and they cannot put enough pressure on Jameis Winston. So he's going out there, he's throwing the football all over the field. But your offense is keeping you in the game. Especially Jahmyr Gibbs, who just went crazy in this game against the New York Giants. But you find a way to come back and win this matchup. And you won this game 34-27 in overtime. Now, this was a very good win for the Lions here. But let's add in some context. Shane Bowen, the former defensive coordinator for the New York Giants, got fired after this game. He's blown a lot of leads this season with the New York Giants. This is a bad Giants team compared to the Lions. The Giants, they're still a rebuilding team. They just fired their head coach. They have an interim head coach in Mike Kafka, and yet this game is close. If this was last season, they would have easily blown out the Giants. But you still win. And we go to the Thanksgiving Day game against Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. Your offense is hanging in there, but your defense, they're having so many bad plays because of the fact they cannot put enough pressure on Jordan Love. And Jordan Love had 4 passing touchdowns against this defense. Jared Goff was 20-26, 256 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. Now, I will say this in this game. It was a situation you could have easily taken 3. You were down by 10 points. You take your 3 points. Now you're down by 7. You go out there, you get a stop at your defense. You're back in the game. It's just a 1-possession game, but you go for it on 4th down. It was a great play call by Dan Campbell. But the football came out of Jared Goff's hand just a little bit behind the wide receiver. And Jameson Williams, he drops the football. And a lot of analysts, they'll say, if you get a hand on it, you have to catch it. Some of those people that are saying that, they've never played football before. It is hard to turn around when he's full steam ahead, running that route to try to catch the football. That's a hard catch. Yes, in an ideal situation, you want him to come up with that catch, but it's still tough. That was more so on Jared Goff. But at the same time, go out there, take your points, take your 3 points. Now you're down by 7. It's a different ball game, but you didn't. And the interior of the offensive line was terrible once again. Jared had little to no time inside the pocket. It came down to 2 factors here against the Packers. Micah Parsons, that interior pass rush, he dominated in this game. And the fact that you cannot get enough pass rush on Jordan Love. Brad Holmes did not help him out this season. And when you look at the base roster with the Lions, Jared Goff having a very good season. Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the best running backs in the NFL statistically. He's 3rd in rushing this year. In terms of rushing yards, 10 rushing touchdowns, averaging 6 yards a carry. Dave Montgomery, they shied away from him, but he's still a talented player. He has over 540 rushing yards this season and 6 rushing touchdowns. Isaac Tesla, who they had high hopes for, he has 6 catches, 100 receiving yards, 3 receiving touchdowns. He needs more volume. And it's very important to bring this up for Detroit. St. Brown went down in this game against the Packers. Sam Laporta, he's out for the rest of the season. He had a back injury. He just had back surgery. So now you need those younger players to step up. Jameson Williams is a very good football player. They need more out of him. They need him to be the number 1 target when they face the Dallas Cowboys. Graham Glasgow, he's dealing with an injury right now at the center position. You drafted Tate, who's a rookie at the right guard position, a very good run blocker. In terms of being a pass blocker, he's not there just yet. And the same with your left guard position. It's just not good enough. So now things have flipped. You still have Taylor Decker, very good left tackle. Penei Sewell, very good right tackle. But they run so many different twists up front. They're targeting those offensive guards in the pass game. And Jared Goff, he loves to step up inside the pocket. He just doesn't have the ability to do so right now because of how bad they are at the guard and the center position. It was a report that came out 4 days ago that Frank Ragnow, he's going to be joining the team again. He's coming out of retirement. Only for news to break out today. He failed his physical. He will not play this season with a hamstring injury. And that sucks. But at the same time, why are the Lions hoping that a player that just retired comes out of retirement to save them this late into the season? It was mismanagement with this team that came down from Brad Holmes. You look at the defense here, Terrion Arnold, he's not a good cornerback even when he's fully healthy. He's dealt with injuries this season. But Terrion Arnold is not a good football player on the back end, and I hope that this is not a Jeff Okudah situation. They need more out of him. Brian Branch is still a very good safety. He did get suspended for a game this season for the altercation with Juju. If the referees would have threw the flag on that play when they blocked him from behind, it would have been a different story. But Brian Branch is still a tremendous football player. Kirby Joseph has missed time this year. He missed that game against the Green Bay Packers. He's a very good safety. You have a Lim McNeil, DJ Reader, Aiden Hutchinson. But the front 7 is just not the same. And they selected Tyleik Williams in the first round, defensive tackle. That's more so of a developmental player over the next 2 to 3 years. That's a project type of player. You have a Super Bowl window. You take advantage of that window and you worry about those picks later on in the NFL draft. You don't spend a first round pick on the defensive tackle that's not ready to go straight out the gate. And I know that they had injuries at the defensive tackle position, but they were still loaded at that spot. They had a lot of depth at the D tackle position. The linebacking spot, Jack Campbell is still a very good player. Alex Anzalone, very good player as well. This is one of those situations in Detroit. I don't have them being a Super Bowl contender anymore, especially this season. You look at the Bears, lead this division. The Packers, second in this division. And the Packers, they swept this team. I believe that you go back to the drawing board and you have to make some moves this year in the offseason. You can still potentially save your season, but you have to win out. And that's going to be tough with Detroit with limitations that they have. But so far, the reason why the Lions look the way that they do is because of Brad Holmes. He didn't pick up the phone. He didn't make a phone call to other teams and try to make the roster better. You could have easily called the Tennessee Titans. Let's bring Kevin Zeitler home. Let's bring in one of those pass rushers. Hey, Miami, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, who's available? Who can we bring in? Let's try to save the season. Let's be overly aggressive. That's what the Philadelphia Eagles have done throughout the last couple of years. If you're going to be content in the NFL, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to like the result that comes out of that decision. You have to be aggressive. And if it doesn't work out, at least you tried. But staying the way that you are, this is what happens to teams in the National Football League. Just because you went 15-2 last season doesn't mean that you're going to have 13 plus wins this year. And the Lions are learning that the hard way. But let me know in the comment section below, do you believe that Detroit can turn things around? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, when each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for the video, guys. God bless. Peace.